It has been the position of this Honorable Court that where an election offense is alleged, the evidence should be clear, cogent, certain, and the proof of which the law commands to be beyond reasonable doubt. It cannot be based on allegation on one side, on a team which is known to be divided, each part supporting its position, and on allegations of the chairman without any further proof when he had had an opportunity to indicate what happened and failed to do so. In the result, it is my humble submission that the allegation made cannot fly. All the chairman is doing is selling the character of other people to augment his claim for higher principle and integrity. And at the end of it, nothing comes out of the allegation. Indeed, after that, they proceeded, considered the results which were not ready as at the time this team was there, and announced the result he wanted to announce. Suffice is to say that this team, having met them and being satisfied that the results were being declared, made a statement to the whole country telling them to keep in peace and that all things were okay. And you will find that statement made on 16th in the affidavit of Mr. Kenywa. The next issue the Attorney General wishes to address is framed as issue number 6, and that is direction of this Honorable Court on queries whether IBC carried out verification, tallying, and declaration of results in accordance with Article 138(3)(c) and Article 138(10) of the Constitution. It is the contention of the Attorney General that the interpretation of the said article is a matter of public interest without going to the application of the article to the dispute before you. The parties have made submissions in connection with the above matter and will not try to take your time by repeating submissions already on record. In this respect, I adopt fully the submissions by Attorney General dated 28th August 2022. The starting point, however, are the two provisions which on the face of it have no ambiguity. They are clear and unambiguous. The Commission is established under Article 88 of the Constitution. Article 250 provides its composition as consisting of at least 3 but not less more than 9 members. Article 253 establishes the composition of each of the independent commission, and Article 253 provides its incorporation. Now, there has been interpretation both by this court and by the Court of Appeal as to what Article 138 it means. And in that respect, I would like to refer you to the case of Raila versus Electoral Commission, and that is the second petition of 2007, and at page it is starts at page 153. At page 153, this Honorable Court referred to the case of Maina Kiai, and in it stated as follows. Clearly, at paragraph 263, clearly this provision in mind, the Court of Appeal in Maina Kiai decision was categorical as it rendered itself. Thus, we are satisfied that this elaborate system, the electronic transmission of the already tabulated results from the polling station contained in the prescribed form, is a critical way of safeguarding the accuracy of the outcome of elections. I do not see how the appellant or any of its officers can vary or even purport to verify those results. Further, the Court of Appeal stated thus, and this is the important one: the appellant, as opposed to his chairperson, upon receipt of prescribed forms containing tabulated results for election of the president electronically, transmitted to it from the near 40,000 polling stations is required to tally and verify the results. The appellant as proposed to its chairman. Later in the ruling, the court stated that it was further argued, that is paragraph 293, it was further urged in court by a number of counsel for the first and second resolution that disregarding from 34As and exclusively relying on Form 34B, many of whose authenticity would later be called into question in the tallying process, the said resolution was simply complying with the Court of Appeal in Maina Kiai. We have already held that we find little or nothing in this decision to suggest that by deciding the way it did, the appellate court restrained or barred first respondent from verifying the results from the before declaring them, or that it was relieving the former from statutory duty of electronically transmitting the results. What the second respondent was barred from doing by the Court of Appeal and the High Court was to vary, alter, or change the results relayed to National Tallying Center from the polling stations and constituency tallying center under the guise of verifying. So here, when they say what the second respondent was barred from doing, they are referring to the chairman. And it seems to imply that the verification ought to be done by the chairman, whereas the court also quoted with approval the finding in Maina Kiai to the extent that the appellant, as opposed to his chairperson, upon the receipt of prescribed form containing tabulated results of election of president electronically transmitted, is required to tally and verify them. The Maina Kiai decision is expressly clear on the issue, and it states at page, I think it is page 104 of our list of authorities, authority number 3, in Attorney General's Case Digest and Bundle of Authorities, page 67 to 107, it says that we hold further that reference to the appellant in sub-article 3C is not to be construed to mean the chairperson, but rather the returning officers who are mandated after counting the votes in the polling station to tally and verify the count and declare the result. The appellant as opposed to its chairperson upon receipt. The appellant as opposed to its chairperson upon receipt of prescribed form containing tabulated results of the election of president electronically transmitted to it from the near 40,000 station is required to tally and verify the results received at the National Tallying Center without interfering with the figures and detailed process. In Article 138.10, the chairperson then declares the result of the presidential election and delivers a written notification of the result to the Chief Justice and to the incumbent president. That is now circumscribed and narrow the role of chairperson of the appellant. So it is clear from that according to Maina Kiai, the role of the chairman was to declare the results, and the role of the IEBC was to tally and verify. And that is indeed consistent with the expectation of Article 10, our national principles and national values. So we humbly request this court to take this opportunity to clarify the position without, I think we need to emphasize, and based on what Justice Lena Ola was raising yesterday, the issue of prospectivity and retrospectivity. We're not going to that as the Office of the Attorney General. The Office of the Attorney General wants a clarification of this provision for future election and on how it impacts on other commissions. Is executive role conferred on the chairman, or the chairman is part of the commission and can only act in community with the commission? And that is consistent also with the provisions of the amendments which were done, some of the amendments which were done in 2017. You will notice that the commission has clearly delegated functions to the returning officers, Section 39(1)(a), that deals with National Assembly and County Assembly for them to tally and verify and declare, and 39(1)(b) deals with the right of the returning officers to tally, verify, and declare the governor, senator, and county women assemblies. But the provision purported to confer the right on the chairman to deal with presidential elections, and that Maina Kiai was very categorical that it was contrary to the provision of the Constitution, and this is what they said. They said that the controversial regulations 83(2) and 87(2) were not affected by amendments, and the object is not difficult to see. The High Court, having found those regulations, that's at page 105, to be inconsistent with the Constitution, it was in bad faith for the appellant to reenact them while pursuing this appeal. It is our firm position that the purpose for which Section 39(2) and 3 of the Act and Regulations 83(2) and 87(2)(c) were promulgated or made have the effect of infringing constitutional principles of transparency, impartiality, neutrality, efficiency, accuracy, and accountability. So that was the position of Maina Kiai. Maina Kiai came to this court. The appeal didn't succeed, and therefore it has impliedly been confirmed by this court. So we humbly request your lordships to take this opportunity, and my ladies, to take this opportunity to clarify that position. To go back, in conclusion, to the members of the NSAC, Lord, I would like to humbly submit that these are Kenyans of integrity, highly professional, who have pulled themselves with their bootstraps and reached the echelon of our system, and it would be very unfortunate when it is left for their name to be sullied in the midst of a political context in which they have no interest. In fact, they were merely asked by the NSAC to send a message. A spokesman was appointed who went and sent the message, but they are now being tarred with the brush of having been trying to unconstitutionally alter a process which is sacrosanct and which they have sworn by their oath to protect in assuming their position. That's my humble submission, and I will donate the 3 minutes to the court. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The 3 minutes and 16 seconds are welcome.
Thank you.
Yes. Mr. Ngatia?
Thank you, Madam President. Please first allow me to introduce the lawyers who have burned midnight hours to present so many affidavits before you. My name is Ngatia Frederick. I'm assisted by the following lawyers: Mr. Kirago Kimani, Senior Counsel; Mr. Kioko Kilukumi, Senior Counsel; Professor Kithuri Kindiki; Mr. Katwa Kigen; Dr. Muthomi Thionkulu; Dr. Linda Musumba; Professor Kivuva Kibwana; Mr. Elias Mutuma; Melissa Ngania, who I had the opportunity to present a matter in 2017 with her; Mr. Mwanza Ombati; Mr. Kipchumba Mokomen; Mr. Benson Milimo; Mr. Wilfred Nyamo Mati; Mr. Edward Mureu; Mr. Hilary Sigei; Madam Monica Nyogutu; Mr. Collins Kiprono; Wanjiko Nyaga; Emmanuel Kibet; Ian Shelela; Caroline Cherono; and Chris Ayeko. Most of them are in court number 1, following the proceedings very intently. Madam Chief Justice, I rise before you. I know it's been 2 long days. Please bear with us to oppose the petition filed by several petitioners. It is the first time in the history of this country that we now have 8 petitions. It must be a new strategy to disable the president-elect to mount a defense against 8 petitions within 4 days. But we didn't manage the impossible, and we now present our defense as follows. First and foremost, my lords, let us appreciate that these consolidated petitions arise from a presidential electoral contest. It is an electoral contest. Ideally situated, or it should ideally be resolved by electorate, the Kenyan voters, not by a court of law. But because it is also part of the constitutional structure of this country, this honorable court is granted original jurisdiction by the Constitution to resolve this contest. But in resolving this contest, it is necessary to bear in mind that all you have are affidavits filed by the contestants. The difficulty with affidavits is that one can structure fiction and peddle it as a pleading, as I'll be demonstrating. I will start with Article 38 of the Constitution, because to me that is the beginning of an understanding of this contest. Article 38 is the one that empowers a Kenyan to vote by secret ballot. And that simple sentence can be broken into 3 or into 2 parts. Voting by secret ballot, meaning it confers on the individual power to exercise a freedom of choice, unhindered by anything. Number 2, or the second part of it, the vote gives the citizen a power or a badge of dignity for self-actualization. Self-actualization in the sense that a voter is entitled to vote for a candidate of their choice. Article 38, to my understanding, therefore becomes the beginning of the understanding of the correct situation that is before this court. It is common ground, and this is important, my lords, that on 9th August, voting took place everywhere in this republic. There is not a single place that presidential election was not held. Even in Kakamega, Mombasa, presidential elections were indeed held. There is no area in this country that did not participate in that voting. Accordingly, legitimacy, I go to the next point, legitimacy of any electoral victory is predicated on the fact that voting did in fact take place. From Article 38, one then goes to Chapter 7 of the Constitution, from Articles 31, going all the way to Article 81, going to 87, which donates a power to Parliament to legislate on elections. I would immediately say this, Madam Chief Justice. The power to enact Elections Act, to my mind, relates to the 5 other tiers of elections. For the simple reason that for the presidential contest, the inquiry is defined in Article 140. The relief is defined in the same article, whereas in the other levels of elections, one could look at the Elections Act. But I'll come to that a little later. I'm doing first and foremost a broad introduction of the areas that we'll deal with. As I indicated, the scope of inquiry of a presidential contest is defined in Article 140. Before you are 8 petitions. They have mutated. Now they are 7. Oh, very well. Thank you. They have mutated to a large extent, particularly the primary petition. But my request at this early stage is this, that when you retire to consider your judgment, please carry out some surgery, see the mutations which have been added, remove them so that you are left with the original inquiry under Article 140. Why it is necessary to do so is because other things have been infused in this inquiry, like who is to be punished, who is to be castigated. Those are not matters that can be dealt with within the purview, limited purview of Article 140. As a matter of fact, when we argued Raila 1 in 2013, this apex court said a petition under Article 140 should be, I quote, concise, precise, and well-focused. Well-focused. It cannot be a meandering, never-ending saga involving other persons other than the inquiry which is specified in Article 140. As I indicated, since elections were held everywhere, that legitimacy then translates to the following. The people of Kenya did express their sovereign will. They did express that on 9th, and what is now under inquiry is whether that sovereign will by the 14 million Kenyans is to stand unhindered, or whether this court would consider any other remedy other than upholding the sovereign will of the voters. Madam Chief Justice, just barely 2 years ago, Ghana was in the same position that this court is in. They held their elections. A presidential candidate went to the Supreme Court. Identical complaints were made. Complaint number 1, ballot stuffing. Complaint number 2, votes ought to have included rejected votes. Identical with the complaint before you. Complaint number 3, the chair lady was not being fair to the losing candidate. Identical things. And what is now happening in this new space is that we are all getting the drafting skills of our colleagues in other jurisdictions. dumping and staging, we learned of it in America not too long ago. It is now before you. Ghana, 2 years ago, had identical complaints with the complaints which are before you. I pause before I go to the Ghanaian way of resolving this dispute to acknowledge my good friend, the team leader, Mr. Senior Counsel Orengo. He started by saying his case is not based on conspiracy. And he had to do that disclaimer for a good reason. It is the reason that, other than conspiracy, there is no case. And I'll come back to that in a moment. I go back to Ghana. Ghana considered all the evidence that was adduced, and the Ghanaian Supreme Court came to this conclusion that the work of the court in a contest of this kind is to look for a substantive truth. I underline the words substantive truth of the elections. Look for the substantive truth of the elections. That's their Ghanaian approach. Then if you look at you are able to ascertain the substantive truth of the election, then the next very important values, they call them values, is to try to get finality and stability. Substantive truth of the elections. Next layer, finality and stability. Why is there need for finality and stability? The whole purpose of these elections is actually to underscore our democracy, to have a government in place for the next 5 years, and then we'll have yet another round of seeking the voters' validation of who will form government. I emphasize the finality and stability because at the end of this contest, what will be bothering this honorable court, if I dare say so, it is what are the reliefs to be given. Elections are carried out by our good Kenyans. I said in 2013, I repeat it again, we are unable to inculcate amongst ourselves the culture of accepting the electoral result. We are just unable to do that. Maybe it is in our psyche, maybe it's in our makeup, but we are unable to do that. Because we are unable to do that, we must then come to this honorable court to try and resolve that dispute in a very unfair way, because the dispute ought to have been resolved by the electorate. In my submission, when you look at this case, devoid of lawyers' arguments, you find it is based on certain planks. Plank number 1, Form 34A was hijacked mid-air, altered, votes from one candidate, losing candidate petitioner, removed, added to the votes of respondent number 1. That is a major plank of it. The easiest way to look at it, because I do not have the ability of Mr. Mahat, who dealt with technology, is to look at it from a point of logic or the antithesis. The antithesis being this: if that is true, from a point of logic, show us one Form 34A in the public portal, because that is where ultimately it landed, which differs with the hard copy at the polling station. Show us only one. or show us a ballot box that people from outer space came and voted into, stuffed into it, and then all this hijacking in midair took place. There's no such evidence. And why there's no such evidence is because that is the work of fiction. Work of fiction, not just conspiracy, but work of fiction. In my submission, therefore, amongst the many things this court is now being called upon to do is to find a way of moderating, I use the word moderating now in the correct sense, the excesses in the political contestants. Excesses such as imagining that this Supreme Court can now take over the role of voters and do a court coronation of any candidate. That would be a heresy. I will be dealing with the reliefs much later. I'm just doing a broad outline. And the next broad outline I would wish to do is to indicate to this Honorable Court that the orders sought in the primary petition, apart from being contradictory, would take this country to a constitutional crisis. We now have the incumbent in office with the limitations in Article 134. Limitations which are set or cast in stone by the Constitution. The incumbent in office cannot even appoint anybody to take over from any of the public officers being vilified before you. If, for example, and I say for example guardedly, this Honorable Court were to even countenance anything other than stability and finality, then a constitutional crisis would be triggered because the petitioner has repeatedly said he will not participate in an election held by IEBC under the chairmanship of Chebukati. We have adduced that evidence in the replying affidavit sworn by the first respondent. That replying affidavit is before you. It was filed on 26th August. We have attached a clip of that discussion. It's in an affidavit by Samuel Githae of the same date, 26th August, and all those are matters that are before you. Since the petitioner will not participate in a fresh election, does not want to accept defeat, then what does he offer? What is the solution he offers? The solution he offers is that there be an election presided over by the vice chair lady of IEBC. And only one needs to state that to see the crisis that this country will be engaged in. It will be a crisis of monumental nature, a crisis that I do not think that you would want to play with that kind of fire, because it will be fire upon fire. In my submission, therefore, I would request this Honorable Court, as we begin our submissions, to bear in mind how Ghana resolved an identical situation by, number one, looking for the substantive truth, and then immediately that should trigger a relief which is finality and stability. If this Honorable Court were to do that, I see a future for us. Any other solution, the crisis offered by the petitioner cannot be a crisis that this court can countenance, because your fidelity is not to anybody other than the Constitution. Since your fidelity is to the Constitution, I dare say then the reliefs that you could consider are the reliefs within the constitutional structure of this republic. With those comments, Madam Chief Justice, allow me to invite the first counsel to present, who is my good friend, Mr. Katwa Kigen. Mr. Katwa Kigen will deal with issues 1, 2, and 3.
May it please, Madam President, my ladies, may it please you, my Madam President, my ladies, my lords, my name is Katwa Kigen. I propose to deal with issue number 1, 2, and 3, and may I indicate that in dealing with those 3 issues, I'll be dealing with them together with Dr. Mudomi. My lords and my ladies, the 3 issues are to this effect. The first issue relates to the integrity of the technology, and the wording of that issue is whether the technology deployed by IEBC for the conduct of 2022 general elections met the standards of integrity, verifiability, security, transparency to guarantee accurate and verifiable results. The second issue relates to the question of whether there was interference with transmission, and it is to the effect whether there was interference with the uploading and transmission of Form 34A from the polling stations to the IEBC public portal. And the last issue that we will be dealing with Dr. Mudomi is the question of whether there are differences in Form 34A, and the wording is whether there was a difference between Form 34A uploaded to IEBC public portal and the Form 34A received at the National Tally Center and Form 34A issued to the agents at the polling stations. Now, my lords and my ladies, some of the issues that I will be discussing, or rather some of the issues we will be discussing with my learned colleague, are issues that have been discussed, but we must mention them, especially considering what the petitioner in the petition that we are dealing with, the one by Honorable Raila, states at paragraph 35 of his petition. And in that petition, I'm just reading the second sentence of that plea, where he states, the evidence shows that the acts complained of were committed by third parties, senior employees of IEBC, acting in connivance with the second respondent in order to achieve a predetermined outcome in favor of the 9th respondent, and the 9th respondent for purposes of this petition is the first respondent. And so we are coming from the position that we maintain and insist that there was nothing that the first respondent did that could be said to have exceeded or to have amounted to collusion with the IEBC. And I would like to start my submissions by reference to the issue of Form 34A and what the first respondent and the second respondent did. My lords and my ladies, in Maina Kia it was determined that Form 34A is for all practical purposes cast in stone. What Form 34A contains is the last word in respect to the wishes of the voters in the given polling station. And if it has to be in any way impeached, it is only when it has been brought to court. And so, in recognition of that, the first respondent, as allowed in law, availed his agents at the polling stations to participate and watch over the process of the elections. And we wish to emphasize that the place of agents is a very material part of this petition. It is going to be a very important issue in your determination of this petition, because the bulk of the evidence in respect to the issue of Form 34A in this petition is the allegation by one Arnold Ochieng, an advocate, saying that he received Form 34As which showed that the data in the Form 34A in the public portal, the data in Form 34A that the agents of the petitioners had, and the data in Form 34A that were brought by the returning officers to the National Tally Center were different. And so the question of whether or not there were agents, whether they could be trusted, and so on and so forth is important. But for purposes of the first respondent, we wish to maintain the position that he had agents, and those agents are failed to him Form 34A through his lead agent. And after the Form 34As had been filled at the polling station, and all the agents available had been invited to endorse and confirm that the data captured in the Form 34A were true and accurate. After that had been done, the first copy of the Form 34A was then transmitted to the National Tally Center, the public portal. The other one was then taken to the National Tally Center. Now, I just want to emphasize two issues in that. One is that both the parties for the petitioner and the parties for the first respondent, had a chance to participate. The second thing I wish to emphasize, my lords and my ladies, is that in the entirety of the petition, none of the Form 34As at the point of the polling stations have been presented as having been challenged at any point. So that then the irresistible conclusion that should be made from the point at which the Form 34A originates is that those Form 34As represented an accurate state of affairs at the polling station, both in terms of data and in terms of the integrity of the process of voting and the counting of the votes. And as I said, then the Form 34As find their way to the National Tally Center, both in terms of transmission and the physical delivery by the returning officer. Again, agents for both parties were given a chance, and as allowed in law, the first respondent made sure that he had representation of his agents and has presented some of those agents to vindicate and verify that the data that was eventually verified at the National Tally Center were the accurate data of what happened at the polling station and passed on to the National Tally Center. I would like also to emphasize that the two things that were supposed to be done at the National Tally Center was to determine the data, and secondly, to establish the security features of the Form 34As. Having said that, my lords and my ladies, and considering that especially at issue number 3, your attention is on the propriety and the integrity of Form 34A, I must submit that the petitioners have not adduced any evidence of any challenge of any Form 34A at any point in the national tally. And this is the second chance they have, having had an initial chance at the polling stations. There is none of the Form 34As that have been challenged. It is with this state of affairs then, and as a result of this process, that eventually we have the declarations of the result coming out to indicate that the total valid votes cast were 14,213,027, being a product of a process that was interactive and where all the parties were involved. It is a product of this process also that comes out with the result that the first respondents' total votes were 7,176,141. Now, the process of verification of the Form 34As before they were transposed to Form 34C is a process that took 6 days. And over the period, all the 6 days, my lords and my ladies, as I already indicated, there was no objection to the verification of the Form 34As. It is our submission, my lords and my ladies, that the petitioner, through his agents, were happy with the process up to the last minute when the tallies were done, and it reflected a win for a party other than the one they wished. So that the reluctance and even this petition is based on objection as to who the Kenyans had wished to be their president. Having said that, then I would like to move on to the main party who has challenged Form 34A. The witness the petitioner has brought for purposes of challenging Form 34A, being one Mr. Arnold Ochieng, and especially all the respondents have referred to him. Probably I shouldn't miss the opportunity to mention that Arnold Ochieng is an advocate. And some of the criticism we have about his affidavit and what it contains is to be looked at with the higher regard of the fact that being a lawyer, he should know more. One, my lords, he has sworn the affidavit and attached Form 34As when in his affidavit he acknowledges he was not an agent at any point. And so it brings in the point that affidavit and what he says is hearsay. Number two, he produces about 20 Form 34As, and in all of them, he does not mention the agent who gave him. He does not say, I received. He says this Form 34A is defective because it has data that is at variance with the public portal. It is at variance with Form 34A that was brought to the National Tally Center. But he does not say at any point which of the agents gave him that Form 34A. Number three, he brings the Form 34As and says they were given to him in terms of either photocopies or photographs from the agents who were on the ground because he was not there. But he does not produce a certificate of electronic evidence to show that those agents have confirmed that indeed this Form 34A was properly generated and is capable of being treated as evidence of any property value in the consideration of this case. And lastly, my lords and my ladies, Mr. Ochieng then certifies that these Form 34As that I'm producing, having skipped, of course, certification from the point of agents, he does a certificate himself saying this Form 34As that he's presenting to court meets the criteria required by Section 106 of the Evidence Act, the electronic evidence. That certificate, my lords and my ladies, says it is a certification of a production of a video, when in fact the attachment he produces are Form 34A. And so, my lords and my ladies, in considering that item number 3, the issue number 3, we pray that you take into account that the principal witness on that issue of Form 34A has adduced absolutely nothing in support of the petitioner's case. Firstly, my lords and my ladies, on our part as the first and second respondents, and similar to what the third and the fourth respondent did, was to pick the Form 34As that the petitioner had brought and said they demonstrate that the Form 34As lacked integrity. And then we went to those polling stations and asked the agents and the presiding officers in those polling stations to confirm to us what they know about the Form 34As that Arnold had brought to this court. And my lords and my ladies will see that we have attached over 6 affidavits from the agents, and each of them say each of those forms were falsified. And I'm using the words falsified to be polite about the issue. I know my colleagues have said worse than that on that issue. The third issue I wish to take up on the issue of Form 34A, the first one was the process. The second one is the evidence against the first and second respondent on that. The third issue I wish to take up about that Form 34A relates to the issue of how they were housed in the public portal and the transmission. And the first point I wish to observe and submit, my lords and my ladies, is that we pray that the court keeps the conscious awareness that the elections were not electronic elections. They were manual. The only issue that was electronic was voter registration, voter verification, voter identification, and the results transmission. And in these proceedings, our focus and attention relates to transmission. Having said that then, my lords and my ladies, we pray that the court takes in on board the point that is made in Section 39 of the Elections Act, Section 39 1F, and the decision of this court in Odinga 2013, paragraph 237. At Section 39, it is indicated that the propriety of the election process will not be defeated by reason of results transmission. And in the Odinga 2013, the court said that it takes judicial notice that it is possible that technology can fail and our elections will not be held captive to the likelihood and the risks that relate to technology. Now, my lords, we would like them to submit to this effect, that assuming for argument's sake it is true that there were any deficiencies or any defects in the process of the transmission of the results, it is our submission that that did not impeach the elections, because eventually the election and the results were declared based on the hard copies that were brought by the returning officers from the constituencies. They were not based on the portal, that the portal is meant for comfort, for transparency, for accountability. It is not meant to represent the accurate and the true results. It is the hard copy that is taken to the National Tally Center for purposes of verification in terms of data and for security features. Two last issues on that issue, my lords and my ladies. The first one, my lords and my ladies, is we pray that in reflecting on this issue of Form 34As and the alleged discrepancies and improprieties, you do note that the petitioners do not point out the variances that they are alleging exist. But most importantly, they do not come up with their own tally. They are saying the results that I just read a few minutes ago, that is 14,213,027 being the total valid votes cast, and the 7,176,141 in favor of the first respondent are inaccurate. They say that. However, they do not come forward and say this is the correct tally and it is based on what. And we pray that you take that on board in considering that issue. With that, my lords and my ladies, I submit that the petitioners have failed to discharge their burden of proof which is above balance of probabilities, to demonstrate that indeed there was any deficiency or defect in Form 34A or in their transmission, and I adopt the submissions made by my colleagues, especially for IEBC. The second issue I wish to address, my lords and my ladies, is related to the same issue of transmission, being the alleged logs that third parties are said to have used to interfere, and in the words of the petitioner, to stage, to dump the Form 34S. And my lords and my ladies will notice that in support of this contention, the petitioners are relying primarily on two affidavits, one by John Kidongo and the other one by Benson Wesonga. And the chain of events is to this effect. John Kidongo swears an affidavit that he sat in some discreet place. He says somewhere in Karen. I don't know what he has against Karen. He says he sat somewhere in Karen with someone whose identity he doesn't disclose, and he was told that some log particulars were used to interfere with the results. Then we have the Wesonga step in and purport to analyze those logs and say indeed his observation as an expert in IT is that those logs were used to interfere with the results. And we would like to observe a couple of things. The first one, my lords, as already submitted by my colleagues in the IBC, for the IBC, is that evidence from Kidongo is a third level hearsay. It is based on information given to somebody who is not disclosed, and Kidongo is the third person in that order. By the time Benson Wesonga is purporting to do analysis, he is at fourth level of hearsay. But more interestingly, my lords, we took time to look at the logs, and what struck us was that one of the logs which had been manipulated, one of the logs escaped their attention, and it has a date 2017. I know my learned friend Mahat already explained how in the 2017 polling stations were used as part of those, possibly the matrix of the logs. On our part, we noticed the date 2017 and it piqued our interest. When we checked, my lord, we realized that indeed the particulars of those logs, or substantial parts of those logs, were parts of logs that had been posted by his friend Professor Makau Mutua in 2017, and they had just been lifted and purported to be the logs that had been used in 2022. In response, and without being technical, we put in an affidavit saying these logs were the one tweeted in 2017, these logs were the one used in the petition in 2017. And what then Mark Kidongo did was to make a fast retreat and saw an affidavit saying, I am retracting what I said, I am retracting the allegations that those were the logs that were used. Now, unlike the first affidavit where he had said he had been given those logs by somebody else, he now comes and disowns those logs personally. He does not say, I have gone back to the shadowy person that I had used, and he has told me that I am mistaken. He now takes responsibility for it and says they are wrong. But he not only says that and just leaves it there. He says, by the way, please understand me, they were meant for demo. He says that I had indicated them and they were meant for demo. And you look at that, you'll see that in his affidavit of the 28th August 2022. Now, my lords, more importantly for our petition, more importantly for our response to the petition, is that those are the only logs that had been presented for purposes, in terms of logs, those were the only logs that had been presented for purposes of challenging this petition, these elections. With Kidongo's withdrawal of those logs, my lords and my ladies, we would have expected that then that element of the petition would not be given to you. You would not need to consider them again because they have been withdrawn. What happens then? One Justice Nyangaya walks in as a respondent and introduces new set of logs. And then, almost in character of Benson Wasonga, he jumps into those ones and now analyzes them and again says they demonstrate and indicate that there was interference with the transmission and the public portal. My lords, as my senior counsel Ngati had indicated, we have a scenario where the petitioners were able to have friends in the part of the case of the respondents. And then we have the situation where Nyangaya as a respondent now makes a new petition, my lords. And we would like that to be an issue for your consideration. Whether you will look at the new logs that have been introduced by Nyangaya in the cause and purport that he is a respondent when in fact is an extension and a surrogate extension of the petition. We submit, my lords, that and my ladies, that you should reject the attempt to have introduced a new petition, one, and number two, a petition that was filed out of time, and number three, that has been innovatively done by the petitioners to extend their case. We pray that you do find that the issues of the logs are dead and they are not available for your consideration. As my learned friend Mr. Mahat said, and Abdikadir said, we would pray, and Mr. Gumbo also said, we would pray that you apply your minds to the scenario where parties come and present to you petitions purporting them to be well-founded when in fact they are based on falsehoods, my lords. And my lords, we challenge you to exercise your capacity to be annoyed at this kind of conduct. Lastly, my lords and my ladies, I have been instructed to also say something about the arguments made by my friend Omutata in petition number 7, in which he argues that the data shows that indeed none of the contestants achieved more than 50+1. And I just want to say three things, my lords and my ladies. Number one is that Omutata, in paragraph 14 of his petition says the 65.4% that he's using was picked on the 9th of August to 2022. My lords, as Mahat already explained, that figure kept changing, as by close of day on the 9th of August it had changed to 64.6, and by close of all the data it was 64.7. My lords, he used a percentage that was not static but was moving. The second thing, my lords, is that he used the wrong denominator. He calculated his data using the total registered voters as opposed to total registered voters in respect to the KIMs that had reported their data. And I think Mr. Mahat already explained that very well. And for all those reasons, my lord, we pray that you do not come to any temptation that indeed the 9th respondent did not achieve 50+1, but indeed to adopt the calculations as done by IBC. Thank you very much, my lords. I pray and request to cede ground to my friend, Dr. Thiongolo.
My lady and my lords, my name is Mudomi Viankolu. My senior started addressing you on the fictional aspects of the case before you, and I'll focus on showing you why it is fiction. And in the literature and the arts, they talk of several genres. When we thought about this matter, we thought the fiction before you is of the genre called tragicomedy. That is a combination of comedy and tragedy. In terms of tragedy, we thought of Macbeth, and we thought of Macbeth talking about the demise of Lady Macbeth and the frustrations of life, and saying it is a story full of sound and fury which signifies nothing. I will tell you shortly why this petition before you is a work of fiction, and specifically a story full of sound and fury, what my colleagues have called shock and awe, but which signifies nothing. We thought of the comical bit of this case, that we have to engage this eminent court to hear spurious allegations. And the comedy we thought about is called Much Ado About Nothing. And we'll be hoping to persuade you that the case before you is not only full of sound and fury but signifying nothing, but is much ado about nothing. Lastly, we came closer home and thought of a work of fiction in the realm of comedy and tragedy by a son of East Africa called Shaban Roberts. That work is called Kusadikika. And many of you, my lords and ladies who have read it, you will find it is a work in which people are invited to believe every allegation, however spurious, however preposterous. And we suggest to you that maybe the petitioner himself is taking you to be that country called Kusadikika by Shaban Roberts, in which if you're told the sun rises in the north, you don't apply your mind. Your challenge, my lady and my lords, is who do you believe amongst all these people with stories and counter stories? Is it the man whose name combines the names of two saints, John and Mark, and the third name, Githongo, who was head of ethics in this country, but has the audacity to produce before you forged logs? And when he is called out, instead of profusely apologizing, he says you yet another affidavit full of ifs and buts. Is it Arnold Ochieng Oginga, advocate of the High Court of Kenya? A learned man, to be fair, but who produced to you documents that were disowned by all the presiding officers, and documents he hasn't told you where he has found them. My classmate, Mr. Mahat, was able to show you have actually been doctored to fit into the narrative of the fiction. Or, my lord, are you going to believe Githongo when he tells you that the undisclosed man was demonstrating to him a Form 34A for governor, even though we all know the results for governor are not streamed on the public portal? Or, my lord, are we going to believe the four commissioners who we all saw day and night for 6 days and 6 nights? I use the word deliberately, my lady, because we never left our TV screens. 6 days, 6 nights. We saw them announcing results that had been verified, and you were told by Mr. Mahat, intercept photo. My lady, why we thought this was the most elementary attempt at the fiction, if you do your math, what the petitioner was telling you is that the Honorable William Ruto was intercepting and changing on average 23 Forms 34A per second in the span of 8 minutes, that he claims we staged, dumped, and altered over 11,000 Forms 34A. A question was asked yesterday, my lady. How do you and when do you change a Form 34A? And I will invite you to note from the structure of that form that most of the data comes pre-printed. The name of the polling station is pre-printed, the serial number. So the only things you would alter on that form are actually the things written by hand, either by the presiding officer, or by the agents, or the deputy presiding officer. 3 clusters of people. In the event there are 4 agents, we are talking handwritings of about 7 people. And you're being told the Honorable William Ruto had the capacity to intercept these forms, 11,000 of them in 8 minutes, and alter them. It is in the realm of fiction. And I suggest perhaps politicians should stick to politics and leave fiction to artists. Or are you going to believe, my lady, when you're told that the Honorable William Ruto had this young man with a laptop at the National Tallying Center, and that this is the laptop he was using to do these things called dumping, staging, and whatever not? I think we may have our own views about various citizens, my lady and my lords, but I am struggling to understand who is this fraudster that would walk to a laptop not in some remote place, some inaccessible place where all he has is the network, but he would go to the National Tallying Center with a laptop, and the only reason he has that laptop is to intercept results in the full glare of our TV cameras, in the full glare of all those security men and women that are in that tallying center, under the eagle eye of all the agents. It is simply spurious. My Lord, you are told all these things, and I'm sorry if this is repetitive. The least we would expect is you to be shown a Form 34A that was altered, and not the ones they have cooked as a work of fiction. The least we expected is for them to tell you which are the polling stations in which this interception, staging, and dumping occurred. In short, my duty, my lady and my lords, is to tell you, even if you are to look at this case with your most magnanimous and generous set of eyes, even if you are to be as benevolent as Father Christmas, the verdict you would return is that this case before you is a story full of sound and fury, but which signifies nothing. The case before you is much ado about nothing, and you must tell the petitioner, this is not the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kusadikika. It is the Supreme Court of the Republic of Kenya. It is to be expected that when you move this solemn court, you don't put us in exercises that leave other civilizations wondering why we have to waste the time of the Supreme Court, or God forbid, even the small claims court, dealing with allegations of the type before you, which cannot be believed even by the most gullible person. Let the works of fiction be left to Hale Grissom, James Hadley Chase, James Bond. This is a solemn platform. I regret and I pity all of us that we came to deal with such a spurious matter. Thank you very much. I see the ground now, my lady, to my learned friend, Melissa Ngania. She will take over on issue number 4 and 5.
Thank you, Honorable the Chief Justice, the judges of the Supreme Court. Of record, my name is Melissa Ngania. I'm going to address the court basically on issue number 4 and 5 as framed by the court. The cornerstone and the grievance of the petitioners in regards to the two issues, number 4 and 5, is the question of the postponement of the gubernatorial elections, as well as the variance of votes within the elective positions. As to the mathematicals, the custodian of the numbers has demonstrated before this court this morning that there is actually no variance, and whatever variance could be explained. But more importantly, Honorable Chief Justice and the judges of the Supreme Court, what is the grievance against our client? That is William